Right. Oh, this is good. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Fabian Elliott, CEO of Black Tech Mecca, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you all here to the Dream Tour Kickoff Chicago. Woo! Awesome. No, so it's great, and it's extra exciting because even though this is our third year doing this, today feels a bit special. It feels a little different to me, and let me tell you why. So when you all were growing up, did your mom ever tell you, you're either going to do something right or not at all? Anyone else? Okay. So Flora Elliott definitely did the same thing. Whether it was cleaning up my room or making up my bed, she was always on me about not being sloppy and giving my best effort into whatever I might be doing. And so the interesting thing is that stuck with me. And it's even informed how Black Tech Mecca, how we think about building stronger Black tech ecosystems. Because we believe if you're going to build a Black tech ecosystem, you need to do it right. You need to do it with some excellence, and you need to make sure that you're taking the time to understand the Black tech ecosystem and how you can best serve it. And so that's a huge focus for us. And so what's really exciting about today and bringing us all here tonight is that last year our focus was on research. So how could we do that due diligence? How could we better understand what was happening in Chicago's Black tech ecosystem? And we released two reports. So the first being our proposed framework on how do you define a Black tech ecosystem, how do you measure one, and how do you go about developing one? And the second one being applying that framework to Chicago to actually assess Chicago. And the groundbreaking thing about it was that with that research and taking the time to do that due diligence, BTM did something that no other organization has done. And now the city of Chicago has information and insights that no other city in the nation has with the report that we've produced. So that's something to clap about. It's exciting. So that's 2017. Everyone knows that research and insights is only as good as the people's hands that you can get that information into that can actually make a difference and actually take action. And so for 2018, this is the year of education, where our main focus is how can we best engage and equip key stakeholders with these findings, with these insights, for them to be able to progress the ecosystem forward. And so we're really excited, and that's cultivated into the Dream Tour and manifested itself and starting right here tonight. And so we're in for a real treat because the team has done a phenomenal job curating some of the best and brightest local BTE leaders and minds are coming here today to be able to engage with us on data-driven discussions and conversations on how do we move Chicago's BTE forward. And so we're really excited about that tonight. Now, huge thanks to our sponsors who make it possible for us to produce these type of events and make them accessible to the community. And big shout out to our media partners who helped us get a full house tonight. So thank you all for that as well. Awesome. So, and a lot of applause. This is going to be a good night. Our speakers are going to enjoy this. This is great. So I'm going to go ahead and transition it off to our host, someone who I've had the pleasure of serving with side by side in the community on various initiatives. One of the smartest guys I know. He knows Chicago inside and out, knows the Black tech ecosystem even better, and is one of, well, in my opinion, the best person that we could have guiding this conversation tonight. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Beckham.
Good evening, everyone. So I am really excited to stand before you. First, I want to thank Black Tech Mecca for having me. It is an honor to be able to be your host for the evening and lead a conversation with some of the sharpest minds that we have in our ecosystem. When Fabian and Dee called me, I was honored. I wanted to do everything I could to kind of do the research and to dig in to understand the data that they brought forth in their report. And they said, Jeff, we're calling this the Dream Tour this year. Last year, of course, it was the state of the Black tech ecosystem. And I smiled when I heard the title, the Dream Tour, because I instantly thought of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when I thought of him, and of course, it was right around the time of his birthday, I thought, of course, the dream speech that he delivered in Washington. But I thought a little deeper. I said, Dr. King, in his last work, wrote the book, and he sat down and took a year off of his work in civil rights era And he wrote the book, Where Do We Go From Here? And in that book, he looked at how we could establish better jobs, better housing. He was fighting for economic equity. And I believe that if Dr. King was here today, he would be fighting for tech innovation and inclusion. He would be using the data that the Black Tech Mecca organization has put together to fight for economic equity through technology across the country. And that's why I love the name, The Dream Tour. The second part of it, Chicago. What is Chicago? Chicago has been and continues to be a place of innovation. Our city is the home of people like George Johnson and John Rogers, of Jim Reynolds. Even Chance the Rapper and Kanye, we have innovated in every industry that we've been part of. And so the Chicago Dream Tour 2018 is a proper name for what we're going to do today. Now, I think it's very cool that we're about a week and a half or 2 weeks away from the release of the Black Panther movie, because we have, yeah, we can give it up for that. We can give it up for that. We have real life superheroes that are going to sit before you today. They're going to talk about the work that they're doing in the community and building bridges and economic diversity, the work that they're doing in fighting for equity in our city, fighting for our children, and I'm excited to sit with them. But before I have that honor, I have the honor to introduce our keynote speaker tonight. So I'm part of a program through the Chicago Urban League called Impact. This is the 4th year. It's a fellowship program. And our first lesson in leadership speaker was our keynote this evening. And the resounding theme as she walked through her career path from working at Sara Lee to Sears to taking on the task of being our first deputy mayor and even now as president and CEO of World Business Chicago was that she fought and continued to try to kick down doors for our community. She's done that in her career, she's done it in her work, she's done that in her life. And I was excited to hear that she was going to be our keynote tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Andrea Zopp, President and CEO of World Business Chicago.
Thank you, Jeff, for that really nice introduction. Geez, it's always great when the introductions, you're like, wow, God, I'm pretty damn impressive. So thank you. I am absolutely thrilled to be here tonight, to be with you. First of all, just to see all of you is so awesome. So just give yourself a round of applause. I'm just so happy you're here. Thanks to Fabian for all the work that you do, and I'm so thrilled to be here to support this work and to really think about how are we going to build and grow our Black tech ecosystem here in Chicago. And because it's really important, it's critically important, and I'm going to tell you why. Because first of all, we all know this, tech is a critical part of Chicago's of our growing economy. We're expanding. Everybody here knows that we're spending a lot of our time on the economic development organizations wooing Amazon. But as we're doing that, one of the things we're learning is that we have an amazing group of tech companies, tech entrepreneurs. It's growing, and it's growing part of the ecosystem and economy for the whole country. And it is really important that Black people have equity, opportunity, and are present. I'm tired of walking into rooms where things are happening, where the economy is growing, and we're not present. I'm tired of thank you. I'm tired into walking into spaces where there's all kinds of desks and I can only see 1 or 2 really beautiful afros picking up over the top. But I'm dead serious about this issue because there's a thing. I work hard on trying for a long time. And the other reason, by the way, I'm really happy to be here because I also know that the Urban League is in the house. Because we know once an Urban Leaguer, always an Urban Leaguer. But I've spent a lot of time working to create jobs. But here's something to remember. Not all jobs are created equal. Right? And the reason it is important is because the growing tech economy is where wealth is going to be built in this country. It's where new ideas are coming from. It's where innovation is coming from. And Black people have to be a part of that. right? That's where opportunity is. You mentioned John Rogers. John is a dear friend. I've known him a long time. I've spent a lot of time with him. He talks all the time about professional services and including professional services when people are procuring, including African Americans in those procurement. Because when you're an investment professional, that's where wealth is created. Jobs in janitorial services and in catering and support services are important. Those are jobs that support families as well. But building wealth so that we can then reinvest in our communities is really important. And being on the cutting edge of innovation and opportunity is important. And Black people have to have an equitable, all people of color, but African Americans in particular, because too often we have been underserved and underrepresented. And so we are not going to have this part of the economy. We have to fight to get our seat at the table. And so that's why the report, Jeff, wherever you went to, or not Jeff, you're over there, but Fabian, the report is really important. If you haven't read it, you should see it. I have read it once. I'm going to go back through because it is data rich. But we have a lot of work to do to really start addressing these issues. You're right, we have to continue to improve the resources and accesses to computer training for our kids in our schools. We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough pathways to show our young people what those jobs of the future actually look like and to encourage them. We have to support our entrepreneurs and really open up those doors of pathway, access to capital, access to the incubators and the support that they need. So we do have a lot of work to do. It's why at World Business Chicago we have the Black, and you're going to hear a little bit from Jimmy Odom, who runs this program for us, the Blackstone Challenge. We got through our mayor, by the way, and so I'll tell you how we got the $3 million to do the Blackstone Challenge. Blackstone is invested in the Willis Tower. They bought it, and they wanted some things from the city to make that investment. And so the mayor said to them, well, if I'm going to do these things for you to help you with this investment, you have to do some things for me. And I need you to make an investment in the people of Chicago. And as a result of that, we got $3 million to invest in inclusive entrepreneurship. So what we're doing is taking that money and making grants to 6 or 8, Jimmy, organizations in 8. I always get it wrong. Organizations that are driving inclusive entrepreneurship, everything from Blue 1647 to IC Stars, yes, woohoo, to Bethel New Life, to the Women's Business Development Center, all of them working on programs to help to open the doors for Black tech entrepreneurs. And that we're finding that that work is starting to bear some fruit. Blue 1647, for example, secured additional funding from partnerships with Google, Apple, Blaze Pizza, and Uptake. Woo. The Women's Business Development Center has secured another $75,000 in addition to the money that we gave them since joining the challenge. Bunker Labs, which works with veterans, has gotten another $130,000. So we're finding that the work we're doing is starting to build for other work. We're going to bring all these organizations and the businesses they work together a foundation day. We're going to bring in the foundation and the funder community to sit with these organizations to get more money for them to continue the work that they're doing. So, it's like all investments, building on those investments. So that work is really important, but that's just one part of the work that we're doing at World Business Chicago to drive inclusive growth. Because we understand the importance because the city is thriving. Not just the tech community. Our central business district is growing at an exponential rate. We just had a report that came out that showed that our job growth has continued in the central business district has continued to grow over year at a rate that exceeds every city, not only in the state, but in major city in the country, which is terrific. But here's the part of the report that's really, really good. We're actually now starting to see job growth outside of the central business district in the neighborhoods. right? And because we've started to put more money in the neighborhood through a number of efforts that are really about taking the growth that's happening downtown and figuring out how to push it out into the neighborhoods. So many of you may have heard of our Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, which is a fund that takes money from developers who are building downtown, trying to grow, expand they have to pay these things called density payments if they want to have more density in their building. Typically, they used to be that money would go into right around the building. It's why you see all those pretty plazas around buildings now downtown. That's the money that they used to pay, used to go right around them. Now that money goes into a fund. We take that fund, 80% of it goes into a fund that we can then use to invest in commercial entities on the south and west side. We got terrific, yay! We gave over almost $3.5 million last year to 32 businesses. And that billion, and to show you like how direct that is, that money came from McDonald's. McDonald's headquarters that they built downtown, they paid $4 million in density payments. $3 million of it went to businesses in the neighborhoods. And in Inglewood, in Austin, in Bronzeville, in Pullman, our businesses, restaurants, barbershops, florists, the kinds of businesses that make neighborhoods strong. We're going to have a brewery, hopefully, God willing. We're working on it. Working on this for a while. Inglewood Brews is going to open up right across from the Whole Foods on 63rd and Halsted. Think about that, right? What's going to happen there? How powerful it is. Down the street from that, there's a collective group that we funded that's going to have a barber shop and an architecture firm and an investment firm that's creating a fund that's going to create neighborhood investment. We're changing the way, all of that coming, by the way, the seed money from that, coming from downtown. So it's about creating pathways to opportunity. It's about using data to do that. And it's about being relentless in understanding that inclusion means equity and it means a fair playing field. That's all we're talking about here, right? You guys are incredibly talented. And if you get a fair playing field, you get an open shot, you're going to blow the doors off. That's what we're fighting for. So that's what we're working towards. That's why I'm so thrilled to be here with you tonight, because the conversations you're going to hear from the amazing people who are doing the hard work are really important. I want you to know that we're working at World Business Chicago to open those doors, to make this city, to make this city not two cities, one city. One city. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Not two cities, but one city. Not two cities, but one city. That's profound. We are going to open up our conversation tonight with a panel where we're going to talk about density. The Kauffman Foundation in 2017 did a Chicago area study, and it found that Chicago ranked 29th overall in 2016 in startup growth. However, that's down from where we were in 2015 at 22nd. Tonight, we're going to have two gentlemen come up that I'm very familiar with their work in enhancing and increasing density of entrepreneurs and startups in the city. First off, Mr. Jimmy Odom, who is the Director of Inclusive Entrepreneurship at Chicago Next. Come on up. And Phil Fairweather, the Small Business Development Officer at Bethel New Life. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, good sir. Appreciate it.
Good.
Yes, sir.
So let's get into it. First question, and this is for both of you. Based on your experience, where has African-American density existed within entrepreneurship and startup, the culture?
I'll just kick off. So I've seen it a lot. In most of my work has been in low-income, underserved communities, South Side, West Side. I was brought to Chicago as part of the federal transition team that took over the Chicago Housing Authority back in 1995. And my mission was to take public housing residents, help them start their own businesses, and then contract with city, state, and federal agencies. So as we shook that tree, we found some of the most amazing entrepreneurs that all they needed was an opportunity to to step out of their comfort zone or even stay within their comfort zone, but get a little bit of support to take it to the next level. So we've seen a lot of startups, and we've contributed to those startups greatly on the south and west sides of Chicago. But as Andrea was saying earlier, they're always in the same types of businesses. Nail salons, barbecue pits, daycare centers, senior care centers. They're all service oriented. So on the west side at Bethel New Life, what we're trying to do now is say, okay, if you want to start those types of businesses, how do you use technology to glean data or improve user experience, just to kind of shift the meter just a little bit. But with the Blackstone grant that Jimmy has really been instrumental in helping Bethel get, we are starting a cohort where we're looking specifically for tech-oriented businesses, and that's what we're trying to cultivate now.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the Blackstone team at Chicago Next. Alia Adam Woods was really one of the architects of this program, right? So when that kind of assignment went out to Blackstone to say, hey, make this investment, that team really began to look at how do we make that capital distribution possible and equitable, right? And so my background, I'm a very novice coder, right? Like I started a technology company here in Chicago. It was a delivery company. And while I could write code, by no means was I like a proficient engineer. And so what I noticed is that my network wasn't very robust with engineers. And so me knowing that at least I identified technology as a growth sector for me. And I was like, this is where I want to really build my wealth, was in this industry. But I was capped at what I could visualize as a potential product I could build, right? So I couldn't design the algorithm that was going to beat, feeder to show you what the most relevant news should be that you get in your feed, right? Like that wasn't I didn't have that context. So I said, let me create what I know. And I knew deliveries, right? So I took this thought and using technology and applied it to my industry vertical that I knew. And it's kind of really interesting to see before we knew one another, anecdotally, that I'm really following that same pattern, right? So I worked with more proficient engineers to help them, to help me realize my vision. And so I think that's because there's such a chasm between those who started out in the technology field as it was emerging, the internet age, right? That those classes in Stanford and Yale weren't probably as diverse, and so their outreach teams, it wasn't as diverse. So that pipeline of engineering talents, probably out of 100 engineers, maybe 2% of them are African American, right? And so they're probably not going to be those CEOs that are starting that Twitter early, right? So we're looking at how do we take the things that we already know, learn these new skill sets, and then marry them to then see what this next generation. So I think that's the big thing is we're trying to make that that marriage before we see this next wave of potential creators.
So Phil, you mentioned that people come to you and they're mostly starting barbershops, hair salons. How do we engage individuals to look in areas that are less dense? How do we move them and move the needle where they're doing things that are innovative outside of the areas that you see so often?
I'll give you a perfect example. So last 3 years ago, I partnered with the University of Illinois Urbana, my alma mater, shout out. And they gave us 3D printers in exchange for running a marketplace literacy program for them. So I just started holding workshops of, look at this, look what this can do. I brought it into my entrepreneurs class, and this is only 3 years ago. Not a single person in that class had ever heard of a 3D printer or seen a 3D printer. So I printed out a whistle and I blew it. And everybody freaked out. 3 weeks later, one of the sisters in the class that had a coffee truck came to me and said, can you print out a Bluetooth baby seat?
Wow.
And I said, a Bluetooth baby seat? And she said, yeah, you get out of the car, you turn off the car. If you don't get the baby out of the seat in 3 minutes, it'll page you. 2 minutes, it'll set off the car alarm. 1 more minute, it'll call the police.
Wow.
I said, no. But we can help you make it. So we partnered with the Museum of Science and Industry, and we started developing the product. A baker that was in my class and saw the 3D printer said, can I make a rolling pin that has interchangeable cookie cutters on it? So I could roll out hearts on Valentine's Day, I could roll out Christmas trees on Christmas. And so just the exposure to the technology started developing all these ideas. So over the last year, we've been just holding workshops on IoT, the array of things, 3D printing, X-carves, laser cutters, and people are starting to get ideas and bring them down. And I'm telling them, you don't have to know how the technology works, you just need to know what it does. And then we'll put it together and help you develop that. And that's what we're doing with this Blackstone grant right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
That's awesome. So Jimmy, I want to transition to you. Yeah, you clap for that.
That's
amazing.
dope.
Yes, absolutely.
They're like, I don't know if I should do that right now.
No, feel led to do that because that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, new markets, things that are out there, things that we should be looking to engage in where we need to have more density. I know you're working on some dynamic things, and I won't steal your thunder, but I would love for you to speak to the blockchain, cryptocurrency, as a market opportunity for density.
So I appreciate that. I'm really passionate about decentralization. I talk about decentralization because, to me, being African American, I grew up going to Holy Angels Grammar School. How many people know where Holy Angels is, right? So shout out to Holy Angels, right? So it was a all-black grammar school that taught us about our history, right? So from Head Start to 8th grade, I heard about those innovators and, like, just the stories, right? And so for me, I didn't know about technology, right? And so I was not aware that it really existed in the way it is. And so those infrastructural systems, right, whether it be the banking institutions or whether it be the policies or the judicial system, I learned that we were not really present in any of these industries, right? So we're not really contributing to their development, right? Because they're design, if you will. And so as I look at technology, and I don't think there's one person in this room that would say that technology has not radically, changed and disrupted human existence, so society, how we interact with one another. That's what we think is possible with this blockchain technology or cryptocurrencies. When everyone on the planet has an inalienable right to contribute to essentially the design of those systems that govern them, right? And so if I were around in the early days of the internet, I would have learned how to code, more than likely. And so I would have a better chance at building a product that would probably be the Facebook of today and the Twitter of today. I didn't have that. So now what's that next evolution? For many of us that are in this space, we see that digital currencies and blockchain technology is that Web 3.0. The third version of where this is going to go, which is predominantly structured around finance and governance and administration. So, for us, it's thinking, how do we educate ourselves in a hyper-growth space? And I mean hyper-growth because we went from, a few billion of dollars to several tens of billions of dollars deployed in 12 months, right? Hyper-growth. How are we present, contributing to these early discussions, conversations, and advocating and evangelizing to our community so that we are present and at the table as these conversations are being developed, right? So if I'm not able to have a conversation at the table, it's going to be made without me. So that's one of the things that I say is that educate ourselves, not saying that's what we think the future will be. Many of us do. That doesn't mean it is, but we do want to be present. So, whether or not you're an engineer, you're a designer, you're a developer, you're a social worker, we want you knowledgeable about these emerging systems and technologies that will theoretically change the way that humans are interacting on this planet.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. It's interesting, as you said, my brain went right to a seat at the table.
It's everything. To me, it's everything.
Phil, you share with me some things you all are doing, too, in terms of new markets and emerging technologies with home automation. Can you share the program Bethel's working on?
So, yes. So this cohort that, as a matter of fact, we closed the application for today for just this cohort, so we can get through our first process with Jimmy, but then we're going to keep it open and we'll bring people in as they come to us. We are taking entrepreneurs where they come to us. So they're coming in 5 buckets. They're either in the ideation stage, and our goal for Blackstone is to get them to the prototype stage. If they come in the prototype stage, our goal is to get them to proof of concept. If they come in the proof of concept stage, we're trying to get them to manufacturing. If they're already in manufacturing, our goal is to scale them. All right? So we're starting to look at, okay, those are the individual entrepreneurs, but how can we look at social enterprise to not only develop skills, but create livable, sustainable wages? So we're just starting the discussions, and this is one of the things that I'm pushing at Bethel is creating training that works on iHome and Alexa, so that way we can retrofit senior housing. I'm actually going through this right now with an elder in the family, and we need him to be able to say, Alexa, call Phil. Alexa, put this on my grocery list. Whatever it is, and be able to do those things. With public housing and senior housing and Bethel, we've got 300 seniors in our building right now that we could be retrofitting their apartment for safety and for convenience, and allowing the elderly to use modern technology, even if they don't know how it works, don't need to know how it works, just need to be able to work it.
Yep.
Because when my father died, he had just gotten to the flip phone. So this gives us an opportunity to train in technology, to start shifting that conversation, giving some more livable, workable skills, and to be able to service our community and take care of our elders.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's interesting to have both of you here together, especially with the Blackstone Bethel partnership. How important is it for other large organizations and foundations to come in and supply that kind of, shot of capital? That we can have more Bethels and Blues, and we need to expand it. We need to scale. Jimmy, can you share some thoughts on that?
I think it's critical, right? So if you look at a community, it's not just made up of its residents, but it's also made up of its companies, its organizations, right, that are present. And for me, the way that I look at this and how I've been engaging with Blackstone, and one of the first things that team, the Blackstone Charitable Foundation, told me was, we look at our money as catalytic capital, right? So we know that our brand name carries equity or weight when they go into a community, and so they want to kick off an activity, and that's the deployment of money from organizations, right, to go in and make those investments. So if you say, if I throw out $1 million, will other people follow my $1 million and see what happens? So I think if more companies felt responsible for the violence that was happening on the south and west sides of Chicago, right? Understanding that could affect their ability to be sustainable in that community, I think they'd be more conscientious. And I think that was what Blackstone was saying, that we're in this city, we know that we're coming here, we're gonna make a big, massive investment, but it's not just that investment by itself. We need to be more conscious about, the collective surrounding communities. And I think if we look at how much money and just simply revenue that's generated, there's no excuse for our communities to be as under-resourced as they are, candidly, right? And so if I have 50 employees and they are not just simply residents at my building, they live in the community surrounding that company. So wouldn't that effectively affect my culture if they came and they're depressed because a family member just got murdered, right? How does that affect my company's productivity? So if organizations thought more intently about that, I think that you probably have more companies engaging and being more socially active, and I hope that that's what this does, right? This partnership between our Economic Development Corporation, the city, our private organizations supporting the entrepreneurs, and hopefully you start to manifest an ecosystem of this collective catalytic activity. And I think that's what we're really hoping for. And it's not just simply for Blackstone's money, World Business Chicago's resources. That's what Foundation Day is about. We're going to invite the world's largest foundations into our city to encourage them to look at inclusive economic growth strategies. This is what it looks like when you work all together in a cohesive manner towards one common goal: economic empowerment.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so one of the other critical issues is longer-term investment.
Yeah.
What often happens is a foundation will come in and they'll invest for a year or 2 years. That's just enough time to get it started, and then the funding is cut off. So you get this movement, you get all this excitement, and then it stops. And then another foundation comes in, funds it, it starts up again, and then it stops. So there's got to be long-term investment in that. Hashtag give us more money.
He's not throwing subs right now at all.
Awesome.
At all.
Let's give it up for the gentlemen, guys. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect segue in India when we talk about catalytic capital. The Chicago region's $561 billion economy is one of the most diverse around the globe. Today we're going to talk about our second index, which is economic diversity. And we have what I believe one of my heroes, a star of Chicago, who's fought for our young people and is now doing the fight at the Anita Borg Institute. Miss Brenda Darden Wilkerson, will you come on up? Before we dive into our conversation, however, we have a video that we want to play with you just to explain some of the work that Brenda's done. So if you guys could cue up the video. Thank you.
I actually was part of putting in a program into a brand new school that they were building. The blueprint had in it an office for a policeman. I was like, well, what about the IT classes? We don't have that in the blueprint. I mean, I'm flabbergasted, right? I'm thinking, you get a place for a police officer, but you don't have a place for a technology lab.
Kids will take chemistry in high school without wanting to be a chemist. They'll take biology with no idea of being a biologist. But at that time, almost no one took programming, thinking that, oh, I'm not going to be a programmer. Why would I ever need that?
We don't expect all of the students to become computer scientists, but all students, no matter what career, can benefit from computational thinking.
We're building this for 4 years, 8 years down the road, but the career that you're probably going to be in isn't even invented yet.
When you open the door to another subject, sometimes you have to lead the kids in to get them excited and show them and convince them this is the magic of social studies or science or math. Computer science different. They're banging at the door.
People still talk about it's all offshore, it's all in India, and there are some things that are there, but they don't even realize some of the reasons that they went there in the first place is because we weren't making our own.
Power is in the hands of those that can create technology, and that's a power that everyone needs to have.
Students can do amazing things. It's not that my students aren't as intelligent as the students across town or these other students, it's that it's all about access.
Not only does every student get computer science, but every student gets computer science with as high a bar as any student.
In Chicago, our goal is to provide entrepreneurs of tomorrow with a rigorous education today. Our vision is computer science for all.
I was so excited when we found out that the graduation requirement had passed. We just knew that now we had our chance.
It would be a first in the nation, a public school system that requires students to plan for after high school in order to get their diplomas.
Everybody's afraid. The trolls immediately started talking about, oh, they can't even read. How are you going to waste time teaching them computing?
If we just get out of the way just because we don't believe something, that doesn't mean that it's too hard for your student.
I'm proud to announce that we're providing computer science education to every single New York City public school student in the next 10 years.
When the White House did it, though, we were actually kind of proud.
I've got a plan to help make sure all our kids get an opportunity to learn computer science, especially girls and minorities. It's called Computer Science for All.
It was funny at first because, are you going to go tell Barack Obama he can't use that name?
Let's put some money in the pot so that just as you have a math teacher and a science teacher and a social studies teacher, you also have a computer science teacher.
I'm telling y'all, I saw President Obama and my heart fluttered a little bit.
No.
I swear.
Yeah.
First off, that's amazing and awesome. As a person who learned how to code at 12 because my dad, who didn't know how to code, put me in front of a computer and said, this is next, son, go learn.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
This warms my heart to see the initiative.
Thank you.
After watching the video, it gave us a snapshot of CS Fall. Brenda, could you talk to us about how the computer science department you built from scratch will provide options for Black students in the city?
Well, I think the key feature that we focused on going in the door really ended up being what we named it, which was Computer Science for All. I was one of the kids who was in an all-black school, not an all-poor school. I always like to say that. We were just all black, and the decision was made that we didn't get this type of introduction. And so I stumbled upon computer science when I got to college. And of course, it's changed my trajectory, but I had to work so much harder because I did not have that introduction. And I didn't have that introduction because I was in an all-black school. And so one of the things that we found was when we tried to introduce it more broadly across the board in the district is if we didn't make it required, it was not going to happen for the underprivileged part of our community, and that meant, to a large extent, meant black students. And so making it required was then the goal, so that every student would get it.
So with it being required, how will this impact their learning opportunities and career options for the future?
So there are so many things that computational thinking that you get learning computer science impact. You know, yes, are they going to have an opportunity to have an amazing careers in technology if they choose it? Yes, absolutely. Are they going to have an opportunity to earn at higher levels than they would if they chose something else? Absolutely. But what you will learn when you learn how to think, which is what computer science teaches you, when it teaches you resiliency and logic, that impacts everything. When a student learns that he or she can create from a very young age, they become much more inquisitive about what their impact can be on other things in their lives. And so you get a more awake and present student in general. And so the younger you teach that to a person, the more you're going to liberate them. And so it's going to impact. I tell you, I cannot wait to see. We launched Computer Science for All fall of 2014. I met a kindergartner named Amber. She started talking about what she wanted to be after 1 week. I can't wait to see what happens to our world when that child and all of those children graduate from high school and have choices to go out and change the world because they've been given the tools and the skills and the opportunity to do that already.
Wow. So I'm sure along with that and all of the things that you've just named, there's some economic impact that comes along with that as well. Can you share some of the information you have on that?
Well, sure. You know, when you start to think about investments, we heard earlier, Andrea talked about the investments that the city makes and how we use our money to grow our way of life here in the city. This is actually one of the cheapest ways to revolutionize our city, is to invest in a student. I mean, really, education has gotten it down to a science. You know, we get a bad name every day about the things that go wrong. But if you think about what happens to in a student's life with the finances that we do invest into a classroom, the opportunities that it creates for students. I have students who started with computer science. It was the first time they'd ever had exposure to it in high school, who got full ride scholarships to college to study information science, computer science. They're already entrepreneurs creating jobs for themselves, jobs for others. And so just that little investment of just a few dollars revolutionized the lives of those students, and now can do that to hundreds of thousands of students. There are 400,000 students in Chicago Public Schools. 40% of those are black students. Every single year, to be able to get that type of exposure is going to be meaningful, not only in their lives, but in the lives of their families, where they're setting those examples of being creators of technology, not just consumers of it, and their neighborhoods, when they can go back and say, here's the type of earning power I'm going after, and they will set that example for the rest of their family and communities.
Wow, wow. Yeah. So I think we were on a panel together in 2011, if I'm going back. It was at the old Google building, and you were working on this then, fighting. I remember your passion. But from my understanding, this has been a 10-year plus journey. Yeah. Can you share some of the challenges you faced and how you've overcome them, as we have people in the room that may have their own CS for All budding inside of them where they're implementing this in their local community. So maybe you can share some of the challenges and how you were resilient in overcoming those.
Well, I think the biggest challenge in trying to do anything new is getting other people to believe what you believe. And so the challenge there before you get to them is that you have to know what you believe. And you have to be in a place where you cannot be talked out of it. That no matter how many times somebody tells you what you can't do and what Pookie can't learn and who won't teach it and who won't hire them, and who won't give them funding. And even though those things may be true now, you have to know that they won't be true. You have to be the one to carry that torch. You have to be the one to keep that fire burning so that that dream can become a reality. And that's exactly what happened. There were only a few people who believed it, and we just didn't take no.
So, based on experiences working with people in other cities to adopt the program, how are some of these challenges indicative of the culture in Chicago?
Yeah. So, I think about that all the time because, and there's a great example, that I'll give later, but I feel like what we need to gather here in our culture is more of a belief in that we can carry through on our own ideas. We come up with great ideas. There are a lot of people around the country who look to Chicago for ideas, but for some reason we don't have the, I don't know what to call it, to believe enough in ourselves to pull together the resources that we need to carry those ideas through. There should have been way more public-private partnerships than existed. One of the things that used to hurt me the most was to be supporting some of these other cities, some of these other states who would leapfrog ahead of us, even though we had been doing this work for so long. And I was happy for them, but I was sad for us. I was sad for the progress that we were not making for our children. I do want to make a comment about when people wonder about things that seem hard like this, I do want to note that never discount the power of one person. One person can do a bunch. And I'll give you an example. Back before we named it Computer Science for All, back before it had any traction at all, there were some key teachers, you saw one of them in the video, who believed and was part of the campaign. He was part of the core group. And he was able to get his principal to basically field test Computer Science for All with all of his freshman class. So this was early on. Those kids are now seniors in college, and they're all rolling off with amazing degrees and have started companies. They're knocking it out of the park. But people used to say, wait. If we had waited 1 year, we would have missed those kids because they only were going to do it that 1 year. So time is of the essence, but one person can make a big difference because that one teacher and that one principal made a huge difference in that class. So it's really important to know what you believe and to be able to overcome the barriers of people telling you no and what you can't do and what you can't make happen even though you have no money.
So you mentioned other cities, and we saw Mayor de Blasio. What was internally different about the attitude of stakeholders from other cities versus Chicago?
Yeah, that's a big one. In New York, they didn't have to be convinced that there was a need for this type of talent. It seems we're all sitting here today and we realize that we're a tech town. That was the first thing we had to convince people that this happened here. The story was, that's all happening on the coast. Well, they're on the coast and they knew. Right? So many of the things that we were doing when we started our early college STEM schools, we started them at the very same time that they started their P-Tech model, which they've blown out of the water. It's doing amazing things because they could get funding because people believed in the idea. Here, it's like you have to have it in play and have it be successful for so long before anyone will fund. So that's a difference. I've seen the same thing in states, like the state of Arkansas. The governor put $2 million into robotics programs. They only have 50% more students in their whole state than we have in this district. right? But that type of money was not forthcoming to us. Those other places have states that get it and are willing to put people at the table to make these things work out, whereas we know what's happening in our state. He'd rather see us bankrupted. So, you know, it's all in those dynamics that make it really hard to make things work. It should have been much easier for us.
So we understand that power, principality, and even people get in the way of progress and innovation.
Yes.
What are some of the things that we can do as an ecosystem to help fight or support initiatives like CS for All and others like it that are out there?
Yeah, well, you can talk to whoever you know. You know, there's the mayor's office, but there's also your alderman. You know, aldermen have money, they have initiatives, they have pressures that they can bring to bear to make these things a priority, because that's what it's about. It needs to become a priority. I heard earlier with someone talking about the long game. The long game is how you need to look at this. When you think about, we started with kindergartners. You know, who knows what Texas is going to look like when that person becomes productive, but they probably will be an entrepreneur by middle school. Who knows, right? You know, so much the better. But put the pressure to bear on people who can think more about the long game. And some of that's around companies and corporations. Many of them will like to do things that are cute and fast, and they come out and they get a Photoshop. But when you talk about building a human being to be a productive member of society, that takes time, that takes a lot of patience. It takes, maybe we make a mistake and we go this way and we need to change and go a different way. But that's a long game about putting the money in, putting in the efforts. So talk to people at all different levels that you have access to, and know that this job can be done because we were able to get it done with very few resources. How much better could we do with more?
So we see the stats about the declining density and population in the city, and some of the seemingly disempowering challenges at CPS. How were you able to maintain your hope and dream for CS for All to come to fruition in that type of climate?
Yeah. I think that knowing that it was the right thing to do. You know, I've been a student. I knew what it meant getting to undergraduate school, having not been exposed to this amazing information, and how hard I had to struggle to become a technologist, to become a computer scientist, because I just hadn't been exposed. You know, we just heard earlier about the little bit of exposure. I mean, that just got me so excited. So I knew that that was important, and I always had a picture of the student in my mind, sitting in the classroom waiting for us, just kind of looking around going, somebody's thinking about me, right? Somebody's got me in their program. And so for me, I took that charge. And I wanted that student to be able to go to school and know that they had choices. It's what I taught my children, that the definition of freedom is choices. And so I wanted to give our students more freedom to be able to choose to participate in an economy that's going to move on without them if we're not at the table. So let's talk about what being at the table means. You know, those algorithms are being developed right now. Those algorithms that are very much impacting our community negatively. We need our students into and at the table sooner versus later. We don't have time to waste. We need people, while AI is starting to increase its reach, we need people of a diverse background who can make decisions that would not have our face not be recognized, or create some of the problems that I know many of you know about. Right? So the sooner that we can get students engaged and get them to the place where they know that they have the power to create, the better.
So you've transitioned to a new role.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the work you're doing now with your new organization?
Well, I've actually come full circle back. I started out as a technologist in the industry and left to go into education. And so now I'm back in a role where what we're fighting for is to open the doors and break down the barriers for women and minorities, technologists who are going into computing. As many of you probably know, the percentage of women technologists and minority technologists has actually decreased over the last decade, and it's less than it was when I was a technologist. And so our organization exists to empower women, to help them know that there are multiple ways to get into the field in whatever way that they want to. And we are fighting for their right to be at the table and to help them to advance into the C-suite.
Awesome. Folks, let's give it up for Ms. Brenda Darden Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Wow, that was great, right? I mean, I was on the local school council at King College Prep when CS for All was rolled out, and I will tell you, we had students that were anxiously excited about the opportunity. And we've seen some of those kids matriculate through now as they're going off into college, and they're majoring in computer science, they're majoring in engineering. And if they're not majoring in computer science or engineering, they have the foundational principles of understanding what it takes to be successful with logic, reason, sound principles. Even if you want to go be a marketer or an attorney at a tech company, now you understand the rules of the game. We have Mr. Will McNeil coming up, who's going to talk to you a little bit about Black Tech Mecca and what they're doing in the community and how you can support and be a part. So Will, come on up.
Good evening. I grew up in the black church. That wasn't acceptable. Let's try that one more time. Good evening. Good evening. As Brother Jeff said, I'm Will McNeil. I'm a proud member of the board. Some of you are still laughing about that. Of the Black Tech Mecca. I've done many things across my professional life, but what I'm most proud of today is being black in tech. I have a short amount of time to speak to you. I've got 3 goals today. One of them is to be brief. The second one is to make you uncomfortable. And the third is to charge you to act. So we've been talking about technology. I'm probably the only person today that brought a bag. And for those of you who haven't figured out yet, this is the participative part of our show today. So technology has solved a lot of problems in all of our lives. I mean, just think about how many of you used something like this to help you get here today. All right. I'm going to add something to your vernacular for your urban dictionary. So we say, show of hands if you have a smartphone. All right, we're about to flip that. Pull your phone out. I'm showing you mine. Show me yours. All right. Show of hands if you have a mobile phone. Keep it out. We're going to need it. So technology has helped us get rid of something like this. How many of you have used one of these in the last decade? Yeah, someone said, what is that? This is a phone book. Some of you are laughing. Some of you can't see this, but coming up to the stage with me, and actually I'm going to come to you. Would you read what that says into the microphone, please?
An FM AM Walkman.
That's an FM AM Walkman. It's the very first Walkman released. So what a Walkman does for those millennials, this was a mobile music device before there was an iPod. Technology has solved some super cool problems. And back then, we had wires in the headphones. Before there were cassette tapes, before there were CDs, and for those of you who don't know, we actually used to put records in cars and play them on long trips. I have 2 other things that technology has helped us solve. One of them is the Webster's Pocket Dictionary. So for those of you who went to college in the 80s and 90s and 70s, you probably were very friendly with this. And for those of you who developed well-established vocabularies, this is called the thesaurus. Today, that is built into Word. I found this, which is actually kind of newer technology. This is antivirus software that came in a box, that came on a CD. So many of you have a computer that doesn't have a CD drive. All right. Technology has solved a lot of problems. This, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, anyone know what this is? This is a checkbook. Online banking is a powerful thing. So now, I've entertained you a little bit, but I had a few questions to ask you. This is the participation part. Please raise your phones again. Show of phones if you're still with me. Show your phone if you're black in tech. Please lower that. Show your phones if you are black in tech and your manager is black. Look around the room. Lower your phones. So show of phones if you are here tonight supporting us and you're not black in tech. I want to thank you for the diversity showing up in the room. Thank you, guys. Show your phones if you are not black in tech and you have ever in your career had a black manager. Look around the room. So if you lower your phones, I'm going to speak slowly. Sometimes I can be like a black preacher. I'm going to say it 2 times. Raise show of phones if you are not black in tech and have never had a black manager. There are some lessons to be learned by a show of phones. I have just a few minutes left. Dee, I'm going to ask if you pull up the next slide. Show of phones. I want you guys to understand that these problems don't solve themselves. Technology, as I have shown you here today, has solved many, many problems, but it has not yet built an app, built an algorithm to solve diversity in technology. That will be solved by the people in this room. That will not be solved by me speaking on a stage today. And as Sister Brenda, every time she speaks, I learned something from her. She said, all it takes is one. Show your phone and support the cause. I'm going to ask you to go to blacktechmecca.com on your phone. Can we do that? Can someone say yes? Yes. Man. All right. And you should have a screen like this. I'm going to show you my phone. And I'm going to pick a button. And I want you to pick a button. And if you're asking yourself, wow, Will, you're asking a lot of me right now. I just met you. That's all right. A lot can happen on a first date. Swipe left. All right? So as you do this, I'm going to ask for your donation and your support because what you do today help us build black ecosystems. It doesn't get built with just talk, it's data. This organization puts together the data so that the people who are making the decisions can be empowered to impact our communities and make investments, not just today, not just tomorrow, not just for one child, not just for 2 children, but for their parents and the people who will power technology, not just for tech workers, tech managers, tech vice presidents, entrepreneurs, people who have capital connecting to other people who have capital who will invest in our community. We all are a part of this ecosystem, and if you understand ecosystems, everyone deposits, everyone withdraws. Today is the last day that things stand the way they are. From here forward, you are all challenged to do more, to do better. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. We appreciate you at Black Tech Mecca. Dee, that is my time. I will take my stuff.
Thank you, Brother Jeff. No, thank you, Will. Thank you. Let's get up for Will again. It is up to us to support the initiatives that are supporting us. This is for us, and we have to support it. So I entreat all of you to go to that website and donate today. Next up, we're going to talk about mobility. We're going to talk about how do you move inside of the ecosystem. we've seen some people that have done it really well, and it feels like, interesting story today, I looked on my LinkedIn profile, and I had a friend comment on the post that I put up for this. It was my old coworker from a tech company that I work with in sales, who is now VP of sales at another company. But interestingly enough, when I clicked on his profile, for the last 4 years, this man has had a VP of sales role at 4 other tech companies. Now, I remember working with him, and I won't go into detail, but I'll just say that his sales numbers weren't as good as mine. And I find it interesting that he has been able to be mobile and fluid in this ecosystem, but he is not African American. We have someone today that can talk about, and will talk about, an organization she started, the work she's done and dedicated her whole career to, and increasing mobility and the upward mobility of African Americans. Let's bring up Miss Alana Robinson, founder of Robinson Group Consulting.
I don't know if I can even get up here.
I got your back. I got you. Okay.
I'm not 6'3" and 239.
It's okay. It's okay. So for those of us who aren't aware of the organization, can you tell us about the origin of the Information Technology Senior Management Forum you started?
Okay. Well, I was one of 20 people who started that organization in 1996. We were in Atlanta at the Black Data Processing Association convention, and at their third quarter meeting. And I was there at the time. I was the CIO at Sarah Lee Hosiery in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I was there at our table where we were recruiting IT talent. And a young lady came up to me and she says, we've got a group of people who are CIOs and in other companies, and we're getting together and we want to meet each other, and we'd like to invite you to the room where you can meet other CIOs. And typically we were all suffering with the ONS, and so that means the only Negro syndrome, because we thought that we were the only one. So when we got in the room and we found that there were 20 of us, we thought that wow, a number of us had achieved that level of being a CIO in a corporate environment. So we did a panel that day for the attendees at BDPA, and we decided that actually there's our patriarch was actually here from Chicago, Carl Williams. At that time, Carl was the CIO at BP Amoco here in Chicago, and it was ITSMF, which is IT Senior Management Forum. Carl Williams had the vision that we should create a pipeline of IT talent in the Black community to grow into the C-suite in major corporations. And so we got together, the 20 of us. We met almost for a year. I was looking at our history information today. And we met for almost 2 years before. In those 2 years, we actually continued to meet. We split the meals. We funded our own initiatives out of our personal funds. We developed to the point where we created an agenda. We got to the point where we got bylaws, and then we created we created an agenda, we got officers, we created a strategy, and then we got to the point where we had actually programming, and it was mature enough that we were able to get our companies to sponsor our events. And so 2 years ago, we celebrated our 20th anniversary, which we were all proud of. And now we're an organization of 400 people. We don't have chapters, but we're comprised of folks who are in IT, mid-manager to executive level IT positions around the United States, and actually in other countries around the world. And what I'm most proud of is that we also have, in our programming, we have 3 academies. We have the Executive Academy for IT talent in the VP level. We have the Management Academy for IT talent in the management level. We also last year kicked off the Emerge Academy for women in IT, for women of color. So we've had almost 500 attendees across our 3 academies. So we are really, and we have data that can prove that within a year of graduating from one of our academies that people get promoted. And so we're quite proud of the content of our academies. We're quite proud of the leadership of our academies. And we're quite proud of the after effect and the impact of the people who attend our academies.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Let's clap for that. So you really created a robust pipeline of talent. How have you, I looked at your bio and I was awed. I was like, I need to have you as a mentor. So afterward, I'm gonna have to, but I noticed that it was these building blocks and this line, I couldn't point a straight line to it, but I saw this upwardly mobile progression. What are some of the elements and the kind of core makeup of who you are that's allowed you to kind of move around? What have you done? What are some of like the tips and tricks you can provide for those in the audience that are trying to move up in the tech world?
Well, I think you accept that career growth is not linear. And I think that if you're willing to take risk with your career, one of the key life-changing moments through ITSMF was we had a session one time in New York and we had a guest speaker then, and I brought a prop. It's a favorite book. I read this at least once a month. Still, that we had Harvey Coleman at one of our sessions in 1998, actually, almost 20 years ago. And Harvey came to one of our meetings. He's an ex-IBMer. He wrote a book, Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed. And his theory was, if you don't really understand the game, and growing a career is a game, that you really can't beat the game or achieve within the game. It's much, much more than your IQ, and actually much, much more than your EQ. But it's really understanding what move are you going to make next, and what kind of tools do you need in order to make that next move. And so we, as a group, even within it, when it was just that 20 of us, we became each other's mentors. And we figured out how we could all become more astute and more competent in the game and understanding the organization and how we could plot our paths so that we could know not only the next move to make, but how to make the move. When I talk about Carl Williams being the patriarch, I never made another move or considered another move without checking with him first. Okay, and how I made a move, and if I was going to make a move, and sometimes I wanted to make a move, and I'd check with him, and he'd say, not that one, and he'd say, no, you're not ready. Or he'd tell me what I needed to consider if I was going to make a move. And so he played that role for many of us. And so the mentoring is not just us being buddy-buddy and having a conversation, but it's really about the candor, and it's about the realism about to what degree are you willing to sacrifice, and are you willing to understand all the elements of making a move. We've made geographic moves, we've made mobility comes with a lot of other elements other than just changing jobs. And the consideration of all those factors are really critical in making a lateral move or making an incremental move.
So you mentioned mentorship as a core component of mobility. With ITSMF, is that an element of practice? Is that a foundational principle? Is that built into your program and structure? Or does that kind of happen more organically as people build relationships, come into conferences and meeting?
I think it happens both ways. I think when we first started ITSMF, for those who have been there since the beginning, what ITSMF really means is it's my family. Okay, so we have even though it's grown to a very large membership, it still has a very intimate feeling and culture to the organization. So it's very much geared toward we care about each other. And so it has a culture that lends toward we care about each other. And so it requires that you come with your authentic self. And when you bring your authentic self to the table, then it allows a more authentic connection to be made so that if you want my help, then my help can be very authentic. And if my help is authentic, then it can actually maybe be meaningful and impactful. Wow. Okay.
So I looked at the information for the Robinson Group Consultant, and it looks like you all at different points in time either place or can become the chief information officer for organizations. How important is it for you and your company to find diverse people of color and women to place into those roles as you're going out and working with other organizations?
It's very important. I really am excited about, I've learned how to make a living being an interim CIO. You know, I'm not looking for a job. I'm too old for a job now. So I like being a temporary employee. And I like being able to create opportunities for others who may be viewed as not good enough in some other environment, okay? Who I view, we make a great team and we get good work done. And we get good work done that we make money at. And so where in another environment, they may be viewed as not good enough. And so they don't have that struggle when they work with me.
Wow, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Miss Alana Robinson, founder and CEO of Robinson Group Consulting. Thank you. A recent survey completed by Global Incubator 1776 found that Chicago was in an emerging state of connectivity. I feel like this is really true. I think we are in an emerging state of connectivity in the ecosystem. One of the things that I love about Chicago, especially in the tech community, is that I feel like we really do support each other. I've seen it. I show up for Jason Johnson, who's one of our panelists. He asked me to come speak. I show up. Leslie Etheridge is in the room from Contexture. She has an event. We show up. We show up for each other. And I think more so in tech than any other industry, we have to step up, and we do step up for each other. So today we're going to talk about connectivity. We have Ms. Natasha Smith-Walker, who's the Executive Director of Project Exploration, Jason Johnson, who is the Director of the Chicago Urban League Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and Jasmine Smith, who's an Account Manager for Spotify. Come on up, folks. All right, thank you guys for joining us. So, Natasha, I'd like to start with you. Can you talk about what Project Exploration is and how you're working to connect our youth to mentors, people in the field, people that they can see as focal points in career, like light post?
Sure. So Project Exploration is actually a nonprofit organization that's been around since 1999. We actually founded on a principle of social justice around equity, access, and opportunity to broaden participation for minority youth and girls in the sciences. It was a value of our organization to look around and say, traditionally, our young people are not getting those opportunities. And even in 1999, now and even 2018, those are still some of the challenges that we're going through. And so as an organization, we're really focused on making sure that we're working in specific communities with specific youth who are not necessarily young people that we think are going to actually end up becoming scientists or engineers or technology IT professionals. They're actually young people that have no vision that this is actually something that they can potentially do. And so we have a model where we actually really believe in STEM mentorship, and we bring out college students who are either in undergrad, graduate, or even some cases individuals who are coming out of the workforce and saying, I want to identify an opportunity to give back. And they work with our students, but then we also recruit individuals who are in the field, whether you are working at the Chicago Botanic Garden or at Google. We also make sure that you come into our programs. And so for us, it's really about providing our young people, our girls, our boys of color, an opportunity to say, you are a tech person, you look like me, I want to learn how to get to that path, and how do we actually develop that pipeline.
You shared some exciting things you're doing on the west side of the city. Can you talk more about that for me?
Sure. So, back in 2011, we actually did a survey, and the survey was really an opportunity for us to look at what was going on in the city of Chicago around STEM learning and in the out-of-school time. And so what we found was very consistent with what I think everybody here who does any work in the city of Chicago realizes, that our African-American communities are STEM deserts, our Latino communities are STEM deserts, and in essence, as much as the school systems are trying to do things, there's oftentimes that schools cannot do it all. And so we're really excited because we actually just received a National Science Foundation award to actually look at the systemic outlook of how do you develop a STEM learning ecosystem within a community. And so within the Austin community, we're going to be looking systematically from preschool all the way through graduation, bringing in stakeholders from parents, educators, business leaders, to say what are the barriers, what are the challenges, what are the impediments that actually prevent young people from our communities that are most in need to pursue science education. I think that Brenda said it accurately, though there are more people that are thinking about going in this, there's actually a decline of women significantly, and definitely of individuals of color in the STEM fields. And so there's a problem, right? So we need to figure out how to develop that pipeline. And so this model, we feel, is going to be a way for us to support communities, to identify what are the challenges, what are the barriers, to work with the district to say how do we actually support those opportunities, to work with other partners within the community, and also tap into, we have an amazing city of opportunities. We have beautiful museums, we have great institutions that have amazing opportunities, and how do we actually work collectively to bring those opportunities into our community. And we're also very excited on Monday. We actually are in partnership with Chicago Public Schools, and we have a building that's underutilized, a Chicago Public School building that's underutilized. And so we are developing a STEM learning center on the west side of Chicago, where we actually have 7 classrooms that will be 100% bringing opportunities to our young people K through 8 to actually do programs, but then also work with teenagers to come there as STEM junior facilitators and to also hone their skills as young professionals. And so we're really excited for that work.
So I went to this really cool event last week called BEST. It was Black Excelling in Sales and Technology, hosted by the employee resource groups, the Black employee resource groups of some of the tech giants in the city. And on our panel is Ms. Jasmine Smith, who is one of the founders of that organization and worked through her organization, Spotify, to kind of bring that together. Jasmine, can you share with me first how that came together and what some of the initiatives of the organization are?
Yeah, so there are employee resource groups at each respective tech companies that exist that a lot of people don't know about. And so about 2 years ago, Spotify, we all went together to fly out in Sweden to create Black at Spotify. And so there exists Black at Spotify, and then there's other respective groups at other tech companies that exist, and we all came together to form Blacks Excelling in Sales in Technology. And so the main purpose of BEST was to figure out how can we all come together as one, and how can we better serve our community? How can we present opportunities for Black and brown folks in tech to better network? And so whether that be, someone contributing a larger amount of budget, or someone having a network that I don't have, or whatever the case may be, we all come together to put on different events and provide resources to Black and brown folks in tech. So the event that you came to was actually our launch event that happened at Ace Hotel, which is right across the street. I don't know if any folks in here were able to make it, but it was a great event. We had drinks, we had networking, we had music, we had giveaway, we had swag, and it was just a great opportunity for everybody in tech to come together and to meet each other, and to see folks who look like you, that do the same thing that you do.
What are your thoughts on large organizations and their need to support initiatives like BEST?
It's a must, I can think back to, 2 years ago when I started at Spotify. I walked in the room as an intern and realized that there were no folks who looked like me, And then almost a few months later, I walked in the room again as being hired in full time. Still, no folks who looked like me. So we keep talking about a seat at the table. It's important to know for everyone in here is that a foot in the door is a seat at the table. Right, a foot in the door is a seat at the table, regardless. So, yeah.
Great, yeah. Great, thank you. Yeah, we can clap for that. Yeah. So, Jason, you have an app, Convo, that's based in research and personality and connecting individuals. And your app has allowed you to collect metrics that have helped you understand the psychology of around how people connect. Having these insights, how do you think we could better connect inside of the ecosystem?
So pretty much, before I must warn you guys, I'm about to go nuclear psychology nerd. Y'all ready for it? Nah, I'm about to go nuclear AF, like for real. But pretty much, one of the things, so we've collected tons of data at a variety of different events. We've been utilized at both State of the Black Tech ecosystems, the two previous ones, as well as tech events all across the city, and then just different entrepreneurship type of events. And one of the things that we noticed specifically in the technology events is most people in tech share an intuitive preference. So an intuitive preference is a preference that's more future-oriented. They prefer to experiment, try different things. They're able to see patterns and data that sensing types aren't able to see as readily. And then they're always trying new things and experimenting with new things, new ventures, new startups. You gotta be a little crazy to try to launch a startup, right? And these are the crazy folks, right? So the thing is, one of the first things that we can do, it all starts with conversation, right? And one of the major ills and issues that go on in our world in general is the fact that we emphasize our differences as opposed to emphasizing our similarities. We'll argue about, okay, I believe in Jesus, I believe in Allah, without even arguing, without recognizing that Jesus is in both books, right? Or we'll get into, he is. A lot of people, Christians, don't know that. Like, Jesus is in the Quran. I'm not Muslim, but I'm just letting you know he's in the Quran. But there's other issues that we argue about and we have issues with, and we emphasize our differences. So let's talk about our commonalities. And when we start talking about ways we can change the world, every entrepreneur in tech is an idealist at heart. They want to change the world. They're focusing on solving the problem. So let's talk about how we can reduce the ills in our world through technology. I think that's a starting point from taking our ecosystem from 2 ecosystems to 1. Some of the things that we're currently doing at the Chicago Urban League Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we've been partnering heavily with Technori. We're actually doing the Black History version of their radio show on I think the tentative date is February 24th, so be sure to check that out. We've been connecting with the Polsky Exchange, connecting with the university. We've done tons of events with them. We've had tons of conversations on how we can collaborate more. We recently launched a program in partnership with a couple other organizations with 1871, their 1871 Live program, where we're live streaming 1871 content to entrepreneurs in our community and tech enthusiasts in our community. So the work is already being done as far as creating a more inclusive and connected tech ecosystem. The key is just recognizing and emphasizing our similarities as opposed to focusing on our differences.
So I'm gonna kick this question to you first, but I want you all to talk about that because I think that that's key. Jason, during your interviews with BTM, you stated that some of the cultural divides exist in the Black tech community because there's a mentality of us versus they. How do we fight that mentality? What do we need to do to conquer that? And why do you think it's prevalent to begin with? And then I'll open it up to all of you guys to answer.
I mean, the thing is, in a lot of respects, we kind of mad, right? Let's just keep it 100. For real, just keep it real. We mad, right? In some respects. When you look at the disparities overall, when you look at less than 1% of Black-founded startups are venture funded, right? When you look at some of these other disparities that we're facing as far as getting people included into the tech ecosystem, as far as the disparities in employees, it's unfortunate that the majority of employees at a lot of these tech firms are like the help, and that's unfortunate. As far as like doing things such as maintenance and some of these other things, where the number's even smaller when you're talking about actual technologists, actual engineers, and things of that nature. So that's that issue, right? And that's not just in technology, that's across all sectors, whether we're talking about economic equity, whether we're talking about, a lot of different things. So there's that issue right there. But again, as I stated, all technologists are idealists at heart, right? So we need to use this idealism to use technology to make changes. Like there's tons of things going out there. Like there's Blendor, that app that allows people to do recruiting without seeing their ethnicity and just selecting people just based on their qualifications, as opposed to having some of these other factors that come in. And I've seen this firsthand because I have a master's in industrial organizational psychology, and my thesis was I did a thesis on how name and address affects resume attractiveness. So basically, we took the exact same resume, black name, city address, white name, suburban address, and we mixed it all up. And with the same resume, recruiters, rated the black candidates as less desirable, or those that they deemed to be black less desirable. So we have a lot of work to do in that space, but technology solves a lot of problems, as this gentleman said earlier. Technology solves a lot of problems, so let's use technology to solve this issue. Because the thing is, everything's tech at this point. So if the tech ecosystem comes together, then that can easily disperse into other sectors and other industries. So let's get to work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that by saying, a lot of times, black and brown folks who work at these tech companies, and you look around and you don't see people who you identify with, it can be kind of hard to make strides and be successful at these companies, because mentally, when you're looking around in a room, there's a level of confidence that you have to have, there's a level of expertise that you have to have, and so that all affects, how you see yourself. And when you look out into the crowd and you look at your colleagues and you don't see those people, that affects essentially your work ethic to a certain extent. So we have to turn the us versus they into we, right? Which is why BEST was formed, so that we're a support system to one another. Is that, one person has a foot in the door, then that's a seat at the table, and then that's another seat at the table, and another seat at the table. So it's important for us to make sure that, we're looking out for each other at the end of the day. It's good that we have Black Tech Mecca. It's good that we have events like this, because it's a perfect opportunity for us to all come together and to figure out what the needs are, to make those strides, to make sure that that we're there,
That's great. That's great.
So I'm going to take it a step further, because I think it's all great, right? And I look around here and I'm amazed at how many people are here. But then I think about, if it wasn't Black tech and if it was just tech, how much larger this would be, right? Because a name matters, right? And so, we believe that really young people, this work needs to start earlier and sooner. Early childhood, kids need to start this work as early childhood. We need to make sure our educators in the early childhood space are equipped and feel comfortable to be able to do this kind of work. We need to make sure that our schools have the kind of equipment and supports from, K through 3, because those teachers are just generally doing regular education, so they need that extra support. But what they really need is individuals like everybody here to help support and partner with schools to come in and say, you may not feel comfortable doing the technology or the biology lessons, so allow us to come in and partner with you to help build those skills. The other thing that happens is that our teenagers are really, beat up on. Johnny from Barrington's father is going to get him that internship at Ingenuity at Accenture, and he's going to know how to go into Accenture, and he's going to know how to come into the office, to sit at his desk, and to do that work. But Jovan from Englewood doesn't have a parent who has an opportunity to send him to an internship here at Google. So how does Jovan know how to navigate that space? How does Jovan know how to be successful? And so, yes, all of the things that have been said by my fellow panelists are true, but I think the other piece is that we cannot wait for a young person to graduate from high school. We need to start sooner, because that young person needs to have those experiences in high school that prepare them for post-secondary. And it's us, right? And so my challenge, and Jeff knows I'm going to do this, but my challenge to everybody here is, if you are Black tech, raise your phone, raise your hand. There was a lot more hands up before, right? We need all of you to step out and say, you know what, I'm a STEM mentor. I'm going to work with a young lady who will look at me and say, I look like you, I act like you, I'm from your community, I'm from your neighborhood, I know your culture, I'm going to work with you, I'm a Black man. I'm going to also say this, Black men, y'all got to step up, because it is so hard to get Black men to come out and work with students on a mentorship basis, it is like pulling teeth. And so for someone who's working with young people and trying to get them ready for high school, for college, it's really, really important for those opportunities to come from our community to support our young people to say, yes, you too can do this, and I'm going to be right there with you. And so that's important.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for our connectivity panel.
Okay.
So you guys stay on stage because this is the time where we open it up to the audience for Q&A. This is your season, your time to be able to ask our panelists any questions or share thoughts that you have on what they presented today. So we'll bring Phil, come back up, Jimmy as well, Alana, Brenda. Yes, come on up. We have mics posted, so if you guys feel so led, you can walk to the mic and ask any of our panelists a question.
Is it on the table? Okay.
Got it.
Right. Are you standing? I'll stand with you. No.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
They've got them coming. All right. Yeah, thank you. Think we're ready? Our mic live? You think you're good? Waiting on the mic live. Okay, if you say it, I'll repeat it, Mr. Stovall. So
okay, cool. Put some hype on the mic for Thomas too. He's looking a little down.
So, there we go. Hot mic. My question is for everybody up on the stage that is leading an organization, which is pretty much everyone. How important do you feel like collaboration is between organizations in Chicago that are leading initiatives for people of color and technology? And for you, what does collaboration actually look like on the ground, like specifics?
I'll jump in. So the Blackstone Inclusive Entrepreneurship Challenge that we launched, this program gave about $1 million out to the community. That's not a lot of money, candidly, right? There's 8 organizations to divvy up those resources. So one of the things that we did was like, let's encourage them to come together and build and work on programs and using partnerships or curriculum to do that. And the first kind of event that we had was this, community matchmaking. So many of these organizations, while only 2 miles away from each other, had never met. The executive directors don't know one another. You're focusing on the same strategic effort and agenda, but you haven't worked together. And so the first event that we did was a mixer. We let each one speak about their program, talk about what the organization did, and then work together after that. So we've got 2 organizations, and I think, can be talked about after that, I think there will be some interesting collaborations that will come out of that, which not only just capital resource, mentorship and advisement, facility leveraging, advisor panels, mentorship, so many things are coming out of that. And that was that catalysm of money, but what else and? So that's one of the ways that we are doing it as a funder.
I'd like to also touch on that. I think the key is having a recognition that everybody can't do everything. So no one organization could be the catch-all for everything. Specialization was more effective. Recognize what you do well, what you do in excellence, identify what everybody else does in excellence, and then from there, you connect individuals, whether they're launching startups, et cetera, to those appropriate resources. I mean, if it's working correctly, if we have a particular client that we're working with, they shouldn't be a client at just one organization. They should be a client at 13 organizations, right? We all should be able to have a story about how we've helped this individual, connect them to resources, help them grow their business, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing is, we gotta be collaborative. We have to recognize what we do well and be humble about it, because you can't do everything, and collaborate, because people think they can do everything, right? But just come together, recognize what we do well, recognize what everybody else does well, and then collaborate and work together.
So I think off of that, we are actually a partnership organization, and so we are one of the organizations that go to communities and actually deliver programs there. And like you said, we're not the experts in all the STEM-related disciplines, and so we work with our partners like the Adler Planetarium or the Garden. And so we actually bring educators from those institutions to our programs to work with our students. And so that's a very concrete way of how we collaborate with our partners. Another way is with our STEM Learning Center. There are 7 classrooms, and our goal is to have all 6 of those classrooms to actually be taken on by different partners. And so, for example, the Chicago Architecture Foundation is one of the first agencies that said, this is the room we want. They're going to come in and create a design studio in that space so that they can offer a West Side program around design. And the third thing is around data. One of the future things that we're going to be doing with our NSF grant, and I'm glad Bethel is here because we're going to be reaching out, is that we're going to be looking at data to say, how do we look at this particularly Austin community? How do we look at the data? And how do we start to articulate a strategy that looks at what every organization does, and how do we continue to support STEM learning within this community, ensuring that everybody has got a role in this and everybody helps support what's the challenge, but then how do we develop those interventions that are collaborative and effective for all young people.
And if I could add one last thing, I think I'm a prime example, as to why collaboration is important, right? So in Chicago, I am the only person that belongs to Black at Spotify. The rest of my colleagues exist in New York and everywhere else, so be it. And so I'm a one-man band. And one of the main things that we don't have that we need is budget. And so along with being a one-man band and not having budget, I have to rely, on everyone else at these employee resource groups in order to be able to properly function. I was able to do one of the biggest events thus far with Black at Spotify was Music Made Me, and I partnered with Twitter Blackbirds. They had budget, I had an idea. We came together and we put on a successful event. Awesome. So collaboration is, extremely important.
Yeah. This is the most siloed city I've ever lived in my life. This is my 7th city in second country. I was born and raised in New York. All the work I've done in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle, and New Orleans. Wow. And this, to me, is amazing. And while I have the floor, we are looking for collaborators for our program. We're looking for user experience people. We're looking for design engineers. We're looking for mentors. Yep. We're looking for people who have relationships so that way we can wrap teams around these entrepreneurs and help take them to the next level. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's connect up and continue this conversation because we're on the move.
Yeah, and I'll add my voice to that. I think many times people think they have to be of a particular skill level to be able to contribute to the conversation around computer science for kids. When you think about people who have become entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs, like the traditional picture of them, they have buddies from various clubs, and they had collaborations, which is what that was, that they built from getting to know each other. And so when it was time to step out, they had sort of ready-made partnerships. Well, our kids don't have the access to their labs after school. They get to go to class for 45 minutes, and if they don't have access to technology at home, then when do they practice? When do they really get those programming chops? And when do they get to work with other people? So really being able to even just be present in the school so that kids could be in those labs after school and spend some time programming, because you become a great programmer from spending the time. So being able to contribute in that way in neighborhoods where we know those resources are not available would be a great collaborative effort.
Yep.
I appreciate it. So I'm going to sit down now. Before I do, I love having the opportunity to talk to people that are well connected in the community. So if y'all wouldn't mind going down the line and just giving 1 to 2 organizations that you think everybody in the room should know about so that we get that before we leave. I appreciate it.
Bethel New Life. And I See Stars.
Oh, absolutely. Well, my focus was so heavily in Chicago public schools. There are so many different communities that helped with that, mostly around the educational community. So I focused on the Black engineers at Northwestern and some at DePaul. And so being able to help those students helped us as well.
Of course, I'm going to mention Black at Spotify. Why wouldn't I? And then I also mentioned BEST again. If there are any folks in the room who work at a tech company and you belong to our employee resource group and you feel like you need, a collaboration or that support, I mean, although we founded it, doesn't mean that we're not looking for more collaborators. The more, the merrier.
All right, Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Urban League, since everybody else is doing it. And then I would say Blue 1647, just because there's a lot of other sub-organizations and programs housed in there where you can really make an impact, whether you're talking about adults learning tech or youth.
So I'll say Project Exploration, but I also would say the We Foundation. This is a young African-American engineer who basically says, very similar to Jasmine, walked into his engineering firm and said, wow, I'm one of one. And so he has now developed an organization that we're actually working with to actually bring men, civil engineers, and really actually all types of engineers into the classroom to work with young men and to really develop their skills and passion actually for building and making.
I'd say IT Senior Management Forum. It's itsmfonline.org, definitely. And definitely we have a focus on STEM. And then another organization I'd recommend, that leader lives here in Chicago as well, and it's BWISE. It's Black Women in Science and Engineering. Erica and Leslie have done a wonderful job in growing that organization, and they have a number of programs focused on women in science and engineering, and have really created chapters around the United States, and they have a very robust program, and so I've done everything I can to support the two of them.
I'd say Just as Informed. I thought I saw Xavier somewhere around here. Incredible organization that really, I think, is helping reshape how we think about social justice, and particularly from an economic perspective. That's, to me, is like the brother's lead in his field in that regard. We work with him at the Blackstone Challenge in Worldbus in Chicago. And then, would say on Black in Tech. I think one of the larger groups that's essentially assembling the collection of the Blacks in technology. So this resource and profiling and identification. So you go to a new city, you could tap into the network. That's a huge opportunity. So those are probably my two organizations.
I've got two too. Leslie Etherly and her Creative Tech Expo that she's hosting. One's coming up in Inglewood, I believe, in May. Starting up now, Brian Jenkins has been doing a lot of work in the South Loop, right at 1550 South State. He has an incubator there called Moxie, and he owns the coffee shop that's now Overflow. It's been Overflow, but it's now Black owned. So I would say support his initiatives. Impact investment is at the core of everything he does.
Hi, good evening. The brother in the middle mentioned something about being mad, and it made me think about the feelings people of color feel in predominantly white spaces. And I wanted to know, could you guys on the panel speak to the importance of emotional intelligence and not only preparing our youth with the technical skills, but also the emotional soft skills to be productive and effective in the workspace and in the tech space?
So I guess since I have the psychology background, I'll kind of kick it off. Emotional intelligence has been found in several studies to be a higher predictor of career success than IQ. So EQ is a bigger predictor of career success than IQ. And why is this, right? When you think about it, IQ may allow you to be really good at doing your job, being very proficient, as far as executing your role. But the further you step away from the work, the more it becomes motivating and inspiring people to execute and to accomplish the role. Because a manager is one step away from the work, like a director is like 2 steps away from the work, and a CEO is like 3 steps away from the work. So how can you be effective the further you get away from the work and inspire individuals to be effective? And that's emotional intelligence. Employing, executing transformational leadership principles, getting people inspired and motivated to execute a vision, being able to articulate an attractive future state to get people involved. Being able to solve complex issues as far as, issues between team members, issues within the organization. All of those things are very, very important. So the farther you get away from the work, the more you have to rely on being able to utilize people skills to be effective. It's very important to be able to cultivate and develop, emotional intelligence.
I would say nobody manages your emotions but you, right? And so I always stay focused on what is it that I need out of this, right? Either I need to learn something, or I need the money, or I need the title, or I need the tenure. Whatever it is I need out of this, I need to stay focused on that. And I do have a line, where my emotion does kick in, but I try to keep that at a point where I continue to stay focused on what I need out of this. In today's environment, it's probably a bit more taxing on that line, about where your line is. But I do think that you need to keep the alligators away, and I do think that you need to stay focused on what's important to you, because the more you allow somebody to impinge on your line, the more likely you're compromising your opportunity to achieve whatever that goal is, whether that goal is money, or that goal is title, or that goal is tenure, or that goal is to learn another skill. So only you know what that is that you're focused on at this particular time, and then you know that I've got to manage my focus so that my emotion does not get in the way of achieving whatever that goal is that I'm trying to achieve. And so you have to have that mind control to be able to stay focused on the goal that you have, and at the same time, not be disrespected. So the balance between those things is something that only you can juggle internally, and that you can control. But in today's environment, there's probably more and more of a challenge on that. And so it's probably something that probably requires a bit more skill to challenge that, something you have to think about more than maybe perhaps in a normal environment. But you have to think about staying focused on whatever your goal is and how to stay true to that goal. Because what you're giving up by compromising with emotion is the goal.
And if I could add to that, it's also about one of the biggest things that I've been telling myself like all last year and this year is knowing your self-worth. It's about not letting the little things interrupt with the larger goals. So if you have your eye on the prize, you're not gonna let the little things get in the way. And you're gonna know your self-worth and what's beneath you and what's, keep your eye out.
And if I could add to that also, I'm a very emotional person. And I'm getting more and more emotional as I get older. I don't know why I'm crying. But I played full contact football until I was 35. I was a mixed martial artist. I got my way through force. And now that I'm in an intellectual field and I can't necessarily do that, but I still have those emotions, I got a buffer between me and that door I'm trying to kick in and run down the hall and start screaming at my CEO. So I have a team at Bethel that I can go to calm down and let them run interference every once in a while, because they know that I'm the driving force behind what we're trying to get accomplished. But if I go off the deep end, it's going to derail everything. So I've surrounded myself with people that I trust and that I could go to kind of soften that blow. So if you can't control it yourself, you need to find a way to, wrap yourself around something.
And I think what that speaks to, if I could just add to that, is the need for there to be community. I think you've heard a lot tonight about us being the only. I loved the phrase that our colleague
ONS.
ONS, there we go. We're like, yes, I know what that means. But that brings us isolation, which elevates the emotion, right? And so being able to have a community of people that you can talk to, who knows what you're talking about, and that you can go to and have that buffer is what I think is very necessary. But then the other piece I want to add to that is I think one of the things we have to do, and of course I'm really focused on the work we did in Chicago with kids, is to begin to teach them that technology is so powerful, but it's not technology for technology in itself. It should be to solve problems for people. And so if we can take those emotions and put it into thinking about how is this work solving or fixing someone else's problem, that's a good place for the emotion. And so I think the problem is not do we have emotion or not, it's what do we do with it in terms of how we bring it to work. You can't have a project work out well if people don't know how to talk to each other. So you have to have that emotional intelligence. You have to be able to work with other people and think about what your place is in the whole mix, so that everybody doesn't have to be the star or the one on top, but that we all work together to solve the problem. So it's all about balancing these things and beginning to teach those ethics early to kids while we give them the power of understanding how to use technology to do things.
Know thyself.
So I want to go maybe on the polar opposite side of the panel. And the reason I say that is because I grew up, listening to the same stories so my parents told me about their experience being in America, and they were told about their parents' experience being in America, and they were told about their experiences. And it doesn't seem to me as if the society's changing to accommodate and account for an inclusive experience. And so I think these conversations are absolutely true if we're met at an equilibrium. If there's equality, I think that's a fair, right? And my issue is, identifying those systems that are clearly inequitable and still behaving as if they are equitable, right? So at what point in time do we say this game is no longer, was it ever fair? And so I'm going to continue to play the game that's rigged against me, right? And so I think that this, there's a quote, that I heard, and I don't remember where it came from, but it's like, if you don't like the way the game is played, you got a few options. You can continue to play, you can get up from the table and leave, or you can turn over the table so no one plays. And so I think that's where we are as a society. and candidly, so that's kind of how, again, growing up and being and having these stories and watching the data and saying, how is it that this city in this country is still unequitable? Mm-hmm. Look at the capital being deployed, but yet the amount of disparity and inequality is clearly visible. And so I don't need to be an engineer. I don't need to be a social scientist to understand something's not right. And so and this is why I'm so charged for new systems that could create equilibrium that you can't change, right? So if you can't fudge the numbers, I feel safer. I feel more trustful. I feel more truthful. So these perspectives, I think, are valid, but assuming that there is an equality at the table. If there is not, I like playing the game. I don't want to leave. No one's playing.
Jimmy.
I think that sometimes you do get angry. And I think that you do get angry, and sometimes you're in settings and you're in situations where you have to, like you said, be authentic, because then you leave and you deal with it, because there's many settings where people look at me because I'm a woman of color and I'm dealing with a whole bunch of academic white men who are telling me what Englewood needs or what Pilsen needs, and I'm thinking, how do you know? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you actually know what they need? Do you live there? Do you have relatives there? Like, what's your connection to Englewood, Austin, back of the yards that makes you an expert because you've got a PhD or several PhDs in social sciences or whatever? And so sometimes that you got to push, and you got to say, if I'm here, my job is to do the right thing for young people, to help broaden participation. And sometimes I'm just that person who says, I'm angry, I'm not going for it, I'm a push. You may not invite me back, but I'm gonna come back. But I'm gonna be the angry girl.
Right, and
I'm okay with that.
I think we just have to be, like, we're speaking for children, I think it's giving them the EQ to identify when that environment's not set up properly. And then them being comfortable and teaching them tactfully how to turn over the table.
Yes.
Right? Whether it be through reporting or it be through the EOG or whoever that is and what governing body. Sorry.
So Jimmy, I want you to also touch on real fast. Everybody's familiar with like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and everything and all of that. But you mentioned something about creating a system that can't be rigged. Talk about how blockchain can definitely create that.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about is systems that the rules are written in code, math and science. It's math. the universal language. And so that is written in a computer language that we can all see. And guess what? Once we've agreed to those rules, it takes 95% of the consensus in order to change those rules, right? And it's distributed, decentralized. There's no one governing person, entity that controls those rules. So we all have to agree and interact at the same point. That's a flat organism, right? That system can't be compromised. And so imagine what it's like to distribute loan dollars. If we're talking about the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, we have banks that are in our neighborhoods but aren't deploying capital per their deposits that the federal government requires them to, right? Why is that? So those rules clearly aren't being enforced. The question is why. There's no transparency as to why they aren't, et cetera, right? So this is how do we really reshape the way in which our societies are governed. It's through some system that, one, it's transparent, it can't be changed unless there's an equal joint agreement to do so.
Okay, so I just want to give just a little context to my answer. Having lived almost 7 decades, you can do the math there. My context is, and having lived almost 7 decades, my filter is fairly thin. So in my lessons to my grandchildren, I do teach how to manage emotion, okay? And I do think that you solve very few things when you're emotional, okay? So I do think that when you feel your emotions being impinged on, you do need to consider, do I punt? What do I do? Because I'm feeling like this line is being infringed on. Okay, so I do need to do something different. But I do think managing that and acknowledging that my line is being touched or being interfered with, that I need to do something about it. And so that I calmly speak up and I do it in an effective way so that I do achieve progress for myself or I remove myself from the situation. Okay, that's what I mean by that.
Excellent question. But we got a little bit of time left. So no, this is cool, a lot of knowledge. But a couple of responses, so we got a lot of questions left. So yeah, if we could get like 2 points and then try to get as many in as we can. So thank you.
Good evening. How's it going?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Quick point and a question. Point is, I found it really hard with a degree and experience to find a tech job here. Ended up with Planar, who you may not heard of roll off the tongue, but you've seen the work. If you ever watch CNN, MSNBC, and God forbid, I don't know why Fox News, all those LED video walls, those are products that we make, we install seamlessly. It's a lot of screens to make one big picture. Point being, and even with that, out of 30 techs as of December, I'm one of 3 black, one other guy from here, one other guy from New York, one female. The point being is, I remember when Oprah said, they asked her why didn't she open a school here, and she said the bureaucracy was so bad that it would have messed up the vision. So my question is, what is more problematic? Is it problematic that you have visionaries that want to put ideals? Is it the kids that are not dreamers, or the people that are in place in power who are sticking the mud and stopping the dream?
Okay, I get that one. I get that one. Because every time somebody asked me about, they'd ask me, what do you do? Oh, I work for Chicago Public Schools. Oh, those kids. And I would say, no, those adults.
Yes.
It was the adults. Yes. Most of my work, 90% of my work, was with the grown-ups, getting them to believe the vision, getting them to believe the kids could learn, getting them to believe that we could convert the teacher staff, that we could teach them, that we could make this happen. They believed the images. They believed that technologists were white men, so they had the gates. They were the ones who said, let's put the money here and not there. They were the ones who said, let's put the curriculum here and not there. It was the grown-ups. So I understand what Oprah meant. I've lived that. But the good news is that we all have to do what we do wherever. Thank God for what she did wherever she did it. But this is our city. And these are our kids. This is our future. And it is up to us to make sure that Pookie and Trayvon and whoever else gets the opportunity, no matter how hard it is. And that means, yes, we're going to have to fight a bunch of adults. We're going to have to change a lot of people's mind politically, in the state, in the city, all over the neighborhood. We're going to have to change counselors' minds because they don't know, they only know the prevailing narrative. So we have to be there to tell the truth, to be those images for them as well. It's not just for the kids. The kids believe like that. It's the grown-ups who don't believe. And when you say, hey, I'm a CEO, they go, okay, so they're the ones that need to have things changed about them. So absolutely, it's the adults.
Oh, thanks for the question. And by the way, this city is regressive against the citizens versus other cities. I've been to them, Austin, New York. This city is the most regressive that I've ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I work in marketing communications, and we've had technology as a client, and we shape the narrative for our clients. Where I'd like to see technology play a role in advocating for professional service, who can make sure that narrative is being communicated in the right way. And I'm asking someone in that question is, how do you advocate for professional services in technology? Because you still need writers, you still need brand strategists, you still need PR professionals. And what's happening is that in the tech field, yeah, I'm an MBE, that doesn't mean anything. So how do we, as a business, be able to use the Black and brown people inside to advocate for professional services?
Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'll speak from this. Prior to the current role I have, I served at the state of Illinois as the assistant director to CMS, which is our largest agency, which is responsible for all the procurement. And one of the things that was important is to identify all of the various service sectors that we were operating in and drive those contracts from the state to those companies that are in those areas. So while I can't speak to internal advocacy, I can say that more than likely most entities or companies have a budget dedicated for procurement of services from minority companies. So while you say like MBE doesn't matter, it does a little bit.
It doesn't in technology. And I'm saying that, and that's where we need to advocate that because it's not happening. It's a talk, but it's no action.
Yeah.
And that's a broken system because it's the bottom that's there, it's the same people. So if you're in a place where you want to see change, we keep pulling from that same path.
But I can touch on that really fast too. The issue is when you have government entities, they have diversity requirements. So the state has a diversity requirement, the city has a diversity requirement. It's not the case as much in private organizations. Right. Some traditional private organizations are doing it, but especially it all just gets back to the narrative within the issue with tech. Not only are they not only are Black founded companies aren't being funded, Black employees aren't being hired, Black firms aren't being utilized. So it's all part of that larger issue that we have with diversity and technology in the first place, which is why we're all here this evening, right? So the thing is, as we talked about collaboration earlier, we need to get together with these different entities within the city, within the state, and talk about ways to address this, right? And ways to hold technology companies to the fire, their feet to the fire regarding, it'd be awesome if Microsoft or somebody was to say, you know what, we're gonna have a 21%, diversity goal. And the thing is, Black and Latino firms, not women, because white women are the primary benefactors of those type of requirements. So let's talk about diversity as far as ethnicity, color, etc. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, that is it for the time for Q&A. I know we had a couple more, but let's continue this conversation online. If you are not following Black Tech Mecca online, please do follow their Twitter, their Facebook page, their LinkedIn, and I believe some of the panelists will be around at the after party as well. so you may be able to catch up with them there. We want to make sure we stay on time. With that being said, I want to bring up Ms. Danielle Siakamela up, the co-founder and director of education for Black Tech Mecca, for acknowledgments and announcements. You guys are free. Yep.
When did you go to Holy Angels?
Thank you all. You're welcome. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Good evening again. I have to tell you, this is the healthiest I've been before one of our events. I'm usually in a frenzy. I'm usually really stressed. But I got my act together and got my tribe to help us put together a really fantastic evening tonight. And so I wanted to take the time to thank them publicly. And so if they are in the room, I would appreciate if they could either stand or raise their hand, just so that we can praise them for the work that they've done. I wanted to start off by thanking my team of super women at Fame Events. I don't know if you've ever met Chris. Here we are. But Chris is a beast. She's incredible. If you guys are ever looking for a meticulous event planner, Chris is your girl. I've never been able to cook dinner during one of these weeks for SBTE. But Fabian has enjoyed dinner twice this week because Chris has been on it. So I wanted to thank Chris. I wanted to thank Jasmine. I wanted to thank Ashley and Melise, who are part of the Fame team. I also wanted to thank my brothers, Eric, Donnie, and my new sister, Brittany, with Digital Cafe. Digital Cafe takes care of all of our video needs. The video that you saw earlier, actually, for CS for All, I did that video when Brenda called us in with them, and they're always so gracious, and they're really, really, really passionate about telling stories that matter to our community. So I wanted to thank them publicly as well, because they do more work than they generally paid for sometimes. But we need them to tell our stories and to keep the hope alive for our community. So I wanted to thank them as well, whoever they are in the room. I also wanted to thank Joe Malone, who was our Google point of contact. Where is Joe, if he's in the room today? But Joe was absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciated his work. I wanted to thank LaShawn Tynes, who is responsible for the lovely branding that you see here today. It's incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. I wanted to thank our Google volunteers, our sponsors, and our media partners. Jeff, thank you so much for availing yourself and for working so closely with me to prepare for this evening. I also wanted to thank someone who keeps me really sane and always gives me a better sense of direction when I'm working on these things. Her name is Neka Kariude, and she's sitting over there, and she probably wants to kill me. But Neka, thank you. Every woman needs someone that she goes and de-stresses to when she's doing this kind of work, and she's always been my support system. My last thank you today actually goes to one of our panelists. When I called Brenda a few weeks ago, she wasn't actually able to make the event. But if anyone knows Brenda, they know that Brenda does the work that she does because she really cares. I've been hearing things about women in Chicago and how we may not be very public, but we're not very public because we're doing the work. And Brenda is one of those women, right? I think I spent my time doing the video crying because I was so shocked at just how much love Brenda has for the children she works with at CPS, right? And I understood that CS for All became possible because Brenda knew who mattered at the time, right? All the politics and the red tape, it didn't matter to her. She had her mind focused on something, and she made it happen. And to me, I really wanted to thank you publicly, number one, for canceling your engagement and coming here tonight so that you can come tell the story, right, of how you can push that type of systemic change, right, in something as what I seem to think is disempowering as CPS sometimes, right? So I wanted to thank you publicly for what you've done, but I also would love for everyone in the room, if you can, I want to wish Brenda well on her new journey. Brenda has just been, she's now the president and CEO of AnitaBorg.com, which is now AnitaB.org. which is a really huge organization. And if no one wants to find it a big deal, I want to find it a big deal, and I want you guys to celebrate that with me. I think it is incredible that we've got this black woman who's going to be able to open up more opportunities for other black women in that organization. And I'm just thankful that Chicago has you. And I'm thankful that Black Tech Mecca has been able to have you from the beginning. And I just want you to know from your tribe in Chicago that we're sending all that good energy and that good spirit to you so that you can continue being powerful. Thank you. Who got a wrist on a band on their wrist when they came in? Cool. So that gives you access to our mixer that's going to be across the road at the Ace Hotel. I know it's not as cold tonight. It's a little nicer. So we're headed to the rooftop. It's not really outside. It's still inside for more drinks and food at the Ace Hotel. So if you guys would still like to connect more, to network more, we'll be doing all of that over at the Ace Hotel. That's my second last announcement, and I'm running out of breath because, as you can see, I'm baking, and I am trying my best to keep up. Yes, the Black Tech Mecca family is going to be introducing another person into the world quite soon, and we're very happy. My next announcement is about an experience that we've wanted to add to our programming for a really long time. But if anyone knows anything about doing the kind of work you do for the community, timing is everything. And so in the 3 years that we've been around, the one thing we've always imagined is creating spaces for ecosystem leaders, right? People who are concerned with the state of their Black tech communities, people who are asking themselves the question, what's happening to Black people in my city, right? What's happening when it comes to tech and to equity and to access? We want to engage more closely with those people, and we want to work with them and the stakeholders that make their work possible, and to create deliberate spaces for them to start sharing information. And so this year we're introducing, the State of the Black Tech Ecosystem is actually going to be that. The Dream Tour is our platform to have very localized conversations about what's happening with each city, because we understand that while there is a huge ecosystem, you've got to understand them in their localized regions, right? Because the dynamics are different. The funding happens at that city level. But we still need this platform that can bring everyone that's doing this incredible work across the country into one space, and for us to really have conversations around the Black tech ecosystem, because it is a thing, it is a phenomenon, right? We can't just get muddled up into what's happening in the general tech ecosystem. We have to pay attention to our own nuances. And so from in the summer of this year, we will be gathering different leaders in Chicago so that we can start having those really critical conversations around how we build up, the work that we're doing, building up our own ecosystems in our cities, and how we can bring that collective effort together for a much more powerful product. So more information will be available for that in the next following weeks. What you can do now, what is available is more information at sbte.co. You guys can sign up for updates. If you are a potential sponsor or a partner, if you're an ecosystem leader and there is a particular talk or workshop that you're interested in bringing to our summit, you have the opportunity now to sign up. Email us, talk to us. This is a collaborative effort, and we're making it really open, and we want to invite you to do this programming with us. So you can go again to sbte.co to sign up for updates and to talk to us about how we can make this an incredible summit. It will be a 2-day immersive experience, and we're really looking forward to having you guys here. So with all that being said, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you to all of our speakers, and we hope that we'll see you across at the Ace Hotel. Enjoy yourselves and drive home safely. Thank you, guys.